He kept calling to check on me, but he wasn't the dad. My name is Sarah Chen, and this happened 2 summers ago when I was 19. I'd just come home after my freshman year of college and was trying to make some extra money. A friend recommended using a babysitting app she'd had luck with, so I made a profile, uploaded a friendly-looking photo, and within a week, I got my first job. The message came from someone named Andrew Mitchell. He said he needed someone to watch his 7-year-old daughter Emma for one evening. His wife was supposedly out of town on business, and he had an urgent dinner meeting. Everything about his message seemed normal. He asked about my experience, requested references, and was polite throughout. We settled on $50 for 4 hours, which was reasonable. The address he gave me was in Willowbrook, a quiet suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes from where I lived. I got there at exactly 6:30 p.m. The house was a beige 2-story colonial with a red door and a Ring doorbell. The kind of place you'd expect a young professional family to live. When I rang the bell, no one answered for a while. Just as I reached for my phone to text him, the door opened. A little girl, brown pigtails, pink unicorn pajamas, stood there holding a stuffed elephant. She looked up at me and immediately pulled me inside, saying her dad told her I was coming to play. The house was clean and well lit, but something about it felt too quiet. Not peaceful, but almost staged. Like it had been scrubbed just before I arrived. Emma led me to the living room, where cartoons were playing. I noticed framed photos on the mantel, Emma with a woman I assumed was her mother. But there wasn't a single photo of a man. It struck me as odd, considering this was supposedly Andrew's house. Emma was sweet and talkative. We colored in her coloring book, played with dolls, and she proudly showed me her pink and purple bedroom stuffed with toys and plush animals. Around 7:30, my phone rang. It was Andrew, though the number wasn't the one he'd used in the app. He asked how things were going and whether Emma had eaten. His voice sounded younger than I expected, not a deep adult tone but closer to someone barely in their 20s. I told him things were fine and asked what Emma usually had for dinner. He paused before saying there was mac and cheese in the pantry. When I went to the kitchen, I noticed how empty everything was. There were basic items in the fridge: milk, juice, yogurt, but it looked like nobody had cooked there in weeks. The pantry had a few boxes of mac and cheese, but not much else. No used dishes in the sink, no signs of recent meals, and the trash can was lined with a fresh bag. It felt like a show kitchen, not a lived-in one. Emma ate quietly while watching Frozen. Around 8 o'clock, Andrew called again. This time his voice was different, nervous, even rushed. He asked if all the doors were locked. Then he asked again. When I told him yes, he made me promise to double-check. I said okay and went to check the doors, mostly to ease my own anxiety. That's when I saw something that made me uneasy. The back door had one of those electronic keypads, and around the edge of the lock, there were faint, fresh scratch marks as if someone had recently tried forcing it open. I locked it again firmly, then went back to sit with Emma. Andrew called 2 more times. Each time, he seemed more anxious. He kept asking if Emma looked scared or confused, whether anyone had come to the door. The 3rd time, he asked me to check if the master bedroom window upstairs was locked. I didn't understand why he'd need me to do that, but I didn't want to upset him or make it seem like I was being difficult. I left Emma on the couch and went upstairs. The master bedroom was at the end of the hall. When I opened the door, I stopped cold. The room was completely empty. No bed. No furniture. Just clean carpet and white walls. Confused, I checked the other rooms. One was clearly Emma's. The other 2. Empty too. Only the living room and Emma's room looked like anyone actually lived there. It felt like a shell of a home, dressed up just enough to fool someone who didn't look too closely. Back downstairs, I sat next to Emma, trying not to let my panic show. I opened the app again and looked at Andrew's profile. It had been created 2 days earlier. No reviews. No other job listings. I searched his name and the address online. Nothing came up. That's when I heard a car in the driveway. My stomach turned. I peeked out through the curtain. A blue SUV pulled up. A woman with brown hair and shopping bags stepped out. She looked just like the woman in the photos with Emma. A man got out from the passenger side, wearing a suit, laughing at something she'd said. My first thought was that this must be Andrew. But he didn't look anything like I imagined. They came up to the door, chatting casually. When they stepped inside and saw me, everything stopped. The woman dropped her bags. The man immediately stepped in front of her, shielding her with his arm. I stood up quickly, trying to explain who I was, but before I could say much, the woman grabbed Emma and backed away. The man asked, firmly, who I was and why I was there. I told them about Andrew. The babysitting job. The app. The calls. As soon as I mentioned his name, both of them went pale. The woman sat down with Emma, holding her tightly. The man, David, as I learned, called the police. He wasn't angry with me. Just scared. While we waited, the woman Rachel explained what had actually been going on. Andrew was her ex-husband. They'd been divorced for 2 years, and she had a restraining order against him. He had a history of controlling, obsessive behavior. After the divorce, he'd become fixated on getting Emma back. He'd shown up at her school, followed them, tried breaking into Rachel's last apartment. They'd moved 3 times to escape him. This house in Willowbrook was supposed to be a fresh start. The empty rooms made sense now. They'd just moved in and hadn't furnished everything yet. The scratches on the back door. From him, trying to get in. He'd used the babysitting app to trick me. To get access to Emma. The calls weren't about her safety. He was making sure they weren't home yet. The police arrived, took statements, and confiscated my phone for evidence. The number he'd used was a burner. And traceable. They told me I'd done nothing wrong, that I was lucky. Andrew had done this before, hired babysitters to lure Emma out or try to pick her up himself. But those babysitters had gotten suspicious and left. I was the first one who stayed. Before I left, Rachel pulled me aside. She thanked me for keeping Emma safe. Then she said something that still keeps me up at night. He would come if we'd stayed out even 20 minutes longer. They moved again a few weeks later. I deleted the babysitting app the same night and never took another job from a stranger again. What haunts me the most isn't what happened but what almost did. Andrew is still out there, and I think about how easily things could have gone a different way. The scariest part. He didn't need masks or weapons or ghost stories, just a friendly message, a convincing voice. And someone like me who thought it was just another job. Something was moving upstairs. But I was told to stay downstairs. My name is Jessica, and this happened 3 years ago, back when I was 19. I was in my second year of college, broke, and desperate to make rent. I'd been applying for part-time jobs all semester with no luck when I came across a babysitting post in a local Facebook group. It seemed too good to be true. $60 an hour to watch an 8-year-old for one evening. The house was on the outskirts of town, an old Victorian that looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. The paint was peeling, ivy was swallowing the walls, and there was a faint smell of mildew even outside. I probably should have turned around right then, but I didn't have the luxury of being picky. Rent was due, and textbooks weren't going to buy themselves. Mrs. Henderson greeted me at the door. She looked to be in her 40s, jittery, like she'd had too much coffee or not enough sleep. She kept glancing behind her while she talked, and her fingers never stopped moving, twisting her wedding ring, tugging at her sleeves. Henderson was more relaxed, or at least he pretended to be. He smiled too much, like someone trying to cover up how uncomfortable they really were. They introduced me to their son, Tommy. He was a quiet kid, polite, barely spoke above a whisper. When I tried to chat with him, he nodded and gave one-word answers. Some kids are shy with new people, so I didn't think much of it. They showed me around the first floor, living room, kitchen, bathroom. Just as we finished the tour, Mrs. Henderson grabbed my arm gently but firmly. Her voice dropped low. "Please don't go upstairs," she said. "We're doing some renovation work, exposed wiring, and stable flooring. It's not safe. Just keep Tommy downstairs and everything will be fine." Before I could respond, Mr. Henderson chimed in, laughing lightly. "Insurance rules. Nothing to worry about. We just don't want anyone getting hurt." They walked me through Tommy's routine, pointed out the emergency contacts on the fridge, then left around 7 p.m., promising to be back by midnight. For the first hour, everything was normal. Tommy and I watched cartoons, made mac and cheese, and he gradually opened up a little. He told me about his favorite video games and what he wanted for his birthday. Still quiet, but not weird. Around 8:30, I heard something upstairs. It sounded like a chair scraping slowly across the floor. I paused and looked at Tommy, but he didn't react. He just kept watching TV like nothing had happened. I asked him if he'd heard anything. He didn't even look at me, just shook his head. I tried to laugh it off. Old house, creaky floors. Nothing unusual. But a few minutes later, I heard coughing from above. Not normal coughing, but deep, raspy, wet. The kind of coughing that makes you instinctively step back. "Tommy," I asked, "is someone else here?" "Did your parents come back?" "No," he said simply. "It's just us." The dragging sound came again, followed by what I swear were slow footsteps moving across the second floor. My stomach tightened. I tried to stay calm for Tommy's sake, and my own, but my brain was already making escape plans. I asked him again, gently this time, "Does your house always make noises like that?" He finally looked away from the screen. "You're not supposed to talk about the noises," he said quietly. It was the way he said it, flat. Practiced that and settled me. I asked him what he meant, but he just turned back to the TV. "The babysitters who talk about it don't come back," he added. The air felt colder all of a sudden. I couldn't tell if it was fear or the house itself, but I wrapped my hoodie tighter and checked my phone. No signal. Of course. Over the next hour, the noises kept going. More coughing. Footsteps, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. At one point it sounded like something heavy hit the floor. I tried not to let Tommy see how shaken I was, but every sound made me flinch. When I tried to call the Hendersons, Tommy stopped me. "Don't," he said. "It makes him mad when they call." Asked who, but he clammed up again. At 10, I got Tommy ready for bed. He didn't seem scared at all. If anything, he looked bored, like he'd been through this routine dozens of times. As I tucked him in, he told me, "He's louder at night. But he doesn't come down if you stay quiet." I didn't sleep. I didn't even sit down. I just waited in the living room, knife in hand. I had no idea what I'd do if someone came downstairs, but it felt better than doing nothing. Around 11:30, I heard the door at the top of the stairs creak open. Then footsteps slow, and even one started coming down. One at a time. With each step, the coughing got louder, closer. I froze in place. The stairs creaked under the weight of someone or something big. The breathing was labored, wet, almost painful to hear. But then, just as the steps reached halfway, they stopped. A few seconds later, I heard Tommy's voice, calm and clear. "Go back." She didn't go upstairs. She followed the rules. There was silence, then breathing, then, slowly, the footsteps retreated. The door closed again. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, waiting for something else, but nothing happened. A few minutes later, I saw headlights in the driveway. The Hendersons were home. Mrs. Henderson looked at me and knew right away. She didn't ask any questions, just handed me the full payment in cash and quietly said, "Thank you, we're sorry." Asked who was upstairs. They hesitated, then told me it was her brother. Brain damage from an accident years ago. They didn't trust outside help and couldn't afford full-time care, so they kept him upstairs, locked in. They claimed the renovation line usually worked. Most babysitters never lasted long enough to ask questions. I didn't know what to say. I took the money and left. Later that week, I did some digging. The brother existed. There had been a crash. But everything else, the secrecy, the sounds, Tommy's strange calm, none of it made sense. It still doesn't. About 6 months later, I heard the house burn down. Official cause, faulty wiring. No injuries were reported, but no one ever confirmed who was inside at the time. I never babysat again, and anytime I see a job offering more money than it should, I think about that house. About what I heard, about the way Tommy recited those warnings like a script, about the footsteps that got halfway down the stairs before turning back. Some stories don't need ghosts to be terrifying. Sometimes the scariest thing is how far people will go to hide the truth, not just from the world but from themselves. The house had cameras, but not for the baby. My name is Alex Morgan. I'm 22 and have been babysitting for years, mostly to support myself through college. I've taken jobs all over the city, wealthy homes, single-parent apartments, even overnight stays, and I've never had an issue until I accepted a job with the Reeves family. It was a one-night gig in an upscale suburb, those cookie-cutter neighborhoods where every house looks just slightly different from the next. Mr. Reeves worked in tech, and Mrs. Reeves was in pharmaceuticals. They offered triple my normal rate to watch their 18-month-old daughter, Emma, while they attended an overnight event a few hours away. The money was too good to pass up. They seemed professional. Mrs. Reeves showed me around: nursery upstairs, kitchen, bathrooms, emergency numbers on the fridge. Emma's bedtime was simple: bath at 7, bottle at 7:30, lights out by 8. Mr. Reeves added that the house had an advanced security system and asked that I not open any exterior doors or windows after they left. I didn't think much of it. Emma was easy to handle, calm, playful, and unusually quiet for a toddler. By 8:15, she was asleep in her crib. That's when I noticed the first camera, a small red light blinking near the ceiling, half hidden behind a decorative shelf. It wasn't aimed at Emma, it was angled toward the rocking chair where I'd just sat. I assumed it was a nanny cam, common enough, though it felt odd they hadn't mentioned it. Later, downstairs, I spotted another light blinking from behind a potted plant on the fridge. This one had a wider view, clearly meant to capture everything happening in the kitchen. Then I noticed a third, tucked between books in the living room, and a fourth, positioned high in the hallway. I stopped counting after 12. Every room had at least one camera. Some had more. All were angled toward spaces where I might stand, sit, or walk. Not a single one was clearly aimed at the child. I began feeling nauseous. My phone had no signal. I checked the Wi-Fi, it had disconnected. I tried the landline. Dead. Looking round, the house started to feel strange. To clean. The fridge held only bottled water, 2 apples, and sealed sandwiches. The pantry had unopened snack boxes. The master bedroom looked and touched 5 identical shirts and blouses. Tags still attached, no personal items, no clutter. In the office, I found a locked laptop and an empty file cabinet except for one folder. Inside were profiles of young women, photos, bios, schedules, family contacts. My profile was near the back, with disturbingly detailed notes about me, school, address, even notes on my habits. The final page was a checklist: interacts with child, yes; notices cameras, yes; attempts communication, yes; investigates house, yes. My stomach turned. I wasn't just being watched, I was being studied. A soft beep pulled me back to the living room. The TV turned on by itself, showing a live feed from the nursery, then the kitchen, then the hallway, then me standing in front of the screen. Each feed had a slight delay, enough to make it disorienting. The screen went black, then a message appeared: subject aware. Initiate next phase. I ran upstairs. Emma's crib was empty. I found her moments later in the master bedroom, sitting calmly on the floor with a stuffed toy. There was no way she could have gotten out of the crib on her own. Someone had moved her. I grabbed her and bolted for the front door. Locked. A key was required to unlock it from the inside and I didn't have one. The back door was the same. Every window had internal latches I couldn't access. Then I saw a phone on the entry table, lit up with a text, "Return the child. Proceed to basement for evaluation." I hadn't seen that door before. Slightly ajar, light spilling out. I didn't want to go down there. Everything told me not to. But I needed to know what this was. I placed Emma in the high chair where she'd be safe and went to the basement door. Before I stepped down, I heard voices. At least two, one male, one female. Talking like it was a board meeting. I turned back toward the kitchen just as the lights cut out. Total black. Only the red lights from the cameras remained. I could hear Emma whimpering. I picked her up, ready to try breaking a window if I had to. Then I saw a 10 emergency exit sign glowing faintly behind a hallway cabinet. I didn't hesitate. I kicked the cabinet aside and bolted through the exit with Emma in my arms. No alarm sounded. No one chased me. I ran into the street and flagged down the first passing car delivery van. The driver let me use his phone. I called 911. Police arrived fast. I told them everything. They searched the house. It was still there but changed. Furniture rearranged. No sign of any cameras. No profile folders. Even the basement was gone, just a blank wall. They located the Reeves through the agency I'd used to book the job. A couple with a baby named Emma. But the Reeves who met me weren't them. No one knew who they were. No fingerprints. No records. The agency had no idea how the job had even been posted. I was questioned for hours, then sent for a psychological evaluation. The official report called it an acute dissociative episode triggered by exhaustion. But I know what I saw, what I lived. A week later, I received a package, no return address. Inside was the same stuffed animal Emma had been holding. No note, just the toy. I moved the next day.